Major Gus and Prof Bruce are working again on different business models. And we just had a conversation about Gus's dad, who's 81, who's living, he's living at home right now. Yeah, and one of the things Gus asked his dad, what's your dad's first name?
Eve.
Yeah, one of the things
Y-E-E, yeah.
Yeah, I know how to spell Eve. One of the things he one of the things he asked Eve was what he thought of moving to a retirement residence, and the answer was, I think, quite predictable, that he does not, Eve does not want to be, you know, in a ghetto of old people. In fact, Gus added that the fastest way to put somebody to sleep is to live in a place where everybody else is even sleepier. And then I told Gus a story about my friend Kelvin Burnett, who said something very similar, that he really doesn't like, he is actually in a retirement residence in Canada, and he doesn't like living there because there's just, the only people he sees every day are old people. And that's very, very, you know, it's hard on a person to be in a ghetto of any type. And that's really what these things have been. So one of the things that Gus is going to do is he's going to think about what kind of a business model makes sense for him and Lori to implement, if in fact this is the right business model. But before we do that, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you a major, a model that failed. Okay? And sometimes
that's the best one to look at.
I think so. I'm glad you said that, because some people don't agree. They only want to listen to success stories. And I wish everything that I did was a success, but I would be lying to you if I said that. So this is something that two young clients of mine, Matt Maxim here and Patrick Trahan, Matt and Patrick tried a few years ago. It's called Phoebe Services. And so it was home-based elder care. So it was something similar to what we've been talking about, and it was called Phoebe Services. Phoebe, I think, was the goddess of care, you know, so they named their company Phoebe Services. And this is a model that failed. It was based on the idea, Gus, I don't know if you ever heard of a show on TV called The Golden Girls.
No.
So The Golden Girls was a television show. It was well known in the 80s, but you were probably 2 years of age then. But The Golden Girls was about a group of women, you could see them on the screen, who didn't want to go to a retirement residence. They did not. They wanted to stay in their community. So they got together and they did something called co-living. Have you heard of co-living before?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they could stay in their community, and they could be in a multi-generational neighborhood, and they could still have access to the outside. You know, as I described to you before we started recording, a lot of these retirement residences, they have beautiful lobbies and lovely dining areas, but when you actually get into the rooms, they're very small. They often don't have a kitchen. You can't make a meal. You have a cot, not really a bed. You do have a bathroom. You have a kettle. You have windows often that open this much. You don't even have a balcony in many of these places. So even though the public areas are quite beautiful, the private areas are actually quite modest, and the cost can be, Gus guessed, around $4,000. My friend Kelvin is paying over $5,000 a month. That's a lot of money. And by the way, the idea of co-housing and co-living is not new, Gus. It started in Scandinavia, in fact, in Denmark. So these ideas have been tried in other countries and worked really well. So the idea was to set up a house where you could have more than one generation, maybe even 3 generations living together. So that's not so much of a ghetto. And when they did some market research, Gus, guess where this kind of a model actually exists in a big way in Canada? In Montreal.
Yeah, I can tell you why. It's easy.
Okay, well, I'd like to know.
It's because there's a lot of people from other communities. So if you look at Greek, Italian, you know what I mean? Like they typically, that's how they take care of their family.
Absolutely. And so there are over 22,000 rooms like this in Montreal. This is back when they were experimenting with the model around 2015. And so the idea was to buy some homes and retrofit them if necessary to you know, accommodate an elderly person. So you'd have wider corridors, wider doors, You'd have handholds, you'd have, you know, roll-in showers so that if you had a walker or even a wheelchair, as long as it's mechanical, not electrical, you could actually wheel into the shower so you could clean yourself up without having to climb over a bathtub. Better lighting, all kinds of things that they were working on. Even the possibility of adding in-home elevators. One of my clients actually did that quite cost effectively. A small elevator, big enough for a walker or a wheelchair, was about $35,000 to go one floor. 2 floors would be more. Have you seen these before, Gus, the roll-in showers?
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, they're beautiful. Even if you and Lori or myself and Dawn had showers like this, they'd be beautiful. They don't stigmatize the property. But if you have a mobility issue, obviously it's easy to get into these kinds of showers. They're quite expensive to install. The other thing that is very important, and in fact, Gus, not just for elder care, but almost all of the properties that we're renovating across Canada, the United States, my coaching clients have what's called zero-step entry. Can you see that here?
Yeah.
And so you don't do, you know, have you ever seen those bridges that, you know, that people put up in front of their homes? You know, they kind of look like this.
Yeah.
You know, they look like that. We do not encourage people to do that because that stigmatizes a house as being a place for old people. What you want to do with zero-step entry is do what this group has done here. I think this is out west. And you do your zero-step entry with landscaping as opposed to some kind of wooden bridge. It doesn't stigmatize the property. Here's another one. This is one that we did in Canada. And, you know, it looks nice. And even if you're a young person bringing in groceries or bringing in your piano, if you're moving, or, you know, if you have a kid, you know, with your, you know, your, what do they call those things the kids sit in? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's even for young moms or young dads, it's easier. So it can be for an older lady or an older man, or for a young mom or a young dad with a baby carriage. So Phoebe Services, the model was this, that they would buy these homes, they would retrofit them for elders, and they would have people on standby, nurses on standby that could provide support. So they'd have PSWs, personal support workers, nurses, telemedicine, all kinds of things available, including meal services if people needed it. All right. So that was the idea. And then this was the first property they bought. This was in Nepean, so, you know, in Ottawa. And you can sort of see that. Can you see how they were doing their zero-step entry here?
Yeah.
So they did it with some landscaping. They put a roll-in shower in there. And you can see that they have, you know, like this toilet roll holder here is actually a grab bar. Do you know what a grab bar is?
Yeah.
Yeah, just in case you know you lose your balance, you can grab a hold of it. But again, even this soap dish here is a grab bar. So they hid a lot of these things, right? So it doesn't stigmatize the property. So they did a pretty good job. This was the living room, and they brought in furniture specifically for elders. So these couches here this couch here that you see is very firm. Because if it's a nice soft couch, an old person can't get out of it, right?
Yeah.
And you notice how all of the tables here have soft edges, rounded edges, just in case an elder falls, you know, she may not hurt herself, or hopefully not. Here's one of the bedrooms. They had, you know, this very simple to use, basically telephone system, if you will. As long as they could push that button here, they could get in touch with one of the nurses on call. And they could also program it, or it could be programmed for them with pictures, so that if an old lady was here and she wanted to call her granddaughter Monica, she doesn't even have to remember a phone number. She just has to push on Monica's face. So they did a lot of, I think, really good things. They had really good internet and Wi-Fi, because even older people are using, you know, Facebook, FaceTime, you name it, to talk to their children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. And we had a group called Keep Connected that made sure all the technology in the home was working all the time. Obviously, there were lots of entertainment services, so Netflix, and today there would be Prime and HBO and many others. They had a coordinator, and her job was to interview people before they came into the system and make sure that they were, still able to cope most days on their own. So these are called go-go elders as opposed to no-go elders. And they had PSWs on call if you needed a little bit of extra help. Backyard gardens, because people like to garden, whether you're young or old, most people do. They would teach old folks, some of them, how to, start their own little business. Like one of the ladies I know started, she knitted baby caps for babies, and she built an Etsy store with help from one of the young fellows from Keep Connected. So that they're active. They're not just sitting there, like you said, falling asleep. They provided obviously cleaning services. And then they had meal services if you needed, and then they had transportation as well if you needed it. So it was a pretty good model, and it was a total failure. I'll just stop sharing the screen for a moment. It was a complete and utter failure. Can you guess why?
So, but the thing is, so the person that were supposed to rent these place, were they alone or with their family?
So the idea was that there would be a group of elders renting together.
Okay. Oh, right.
So
yeah. So I guess to find the match, like to match people that don't know each other, like it's hard enough to find like one person, right? A good match. But if you introduce like 4, then the complexity is exponential, right?
And no question about that. And that was an issue. You're correct about that. But did you ever see, there's another film that you should see. I mentioned before we started recording that you and Laurie should watch, The Notebook, which is a beautiful love story. There's another one. It's called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yes.
Have you ever watched that film?
I know about it, but I don't think I've seen it.
I think you should watch that film because that is actually relevant to this model. And it's another one that I think Laurie will really like. It's another love story. I like chick flicks. I watch them with I have 3 daughters and a wife and a mother-in-law. So I'm used to watching chick flicks. And I like them. So this story is about, do you know Brad Pitt, right? Brad Pitt's in this one. And so Brad Pitt plays a man who is born old and ages backwards. So when you first see Brad Pitt, he's like this high, and he's a really old, ugly man, And then as he grows up, when he's 7, he's a little taller, like a normal baby, but he's also getting younger. So he ages backwards, and he meets when he's a child, even though he looks like an old man, he meets a young girl. Her name is Daisy, and Daisy is aging forwards, he's aging backwards, and they meet in the middle and fall in love. It's beautiful. But the reason I tell you this is if you watch that film, I want you to look at where Benjamin ends up. He ends up in a retirement home run exactly like Phoebe Services. So he is adopted by a Black woman because, the parents of this really ugly old baby, they don't want anything to do with them. They just abandon them. And this very, very wonderful Black woman finds the baby and decides to bring him up in her house. And she runs a retirement residence in a house. And so this model, Phoebe Services, is not a new model. This issue that you brought up, which is a good one, the problem of matching, that has existed for at least 200 years. So the model that Benjamin's adopted mom pursues in this film successfully is she runs a home where she takes in elders. But it is a multi-generational place. She's younger, and of course she has her son, and she has other people staying with her. So it's in the community and whatever. So the matching problem is there, but I don't think that's insurmountable. But there was an insurmountable problem. The people who would come to look at these homes were elderly people in their 80s and 90s, most of them, almost all of them, I think, women. And they loved it. They said, I could live here and I'm lonely, you know, because a lot of these women were living in a single family home by themselves. And that can be very lonely. So they said, oh, this is fantastic. How much do I have to pay for my bedroom, you know, and being part of this house? And it was around $1,500 a month. And she would say, oh, gee, that's super cheap compared to the retirement residence, which back then were about $3,500 a month. And today it's closer to $5,500 a month. But back then it was $3,500. So they could save, you know, $2,000 a month, move in, and they would have some company. So the elders actually really liked it. The next phone call, though, Pat and Matt would get would be from either the daughter or the granddaughter. And the daughter or the granddaughter would ask the same question over and over again. So, of course, there's a 24/7, 365-day nursing station in the home, right? And Pat and Matt Maxim, Pat Trahan and Matt Maxim would say, well, no, we have 2 nurses on call 24/7, 365. And they live 10 minutes from the house. So if there's a problem, they could be there usually in about 10 or 15 minutes. Or if you just press on this button, they can be there instantly by video. Oh, no. She would have to live in the house. You'd have to staff a 24/7, 365-day a year nursing station. Gus, do you know how much that would cost?
100K a year, 120. Let's say 140.
Yeah, that's a very good guess. It's $400,000 a year plus. Well, in a little house like I just showed you, that's impossible. Absolutely impossible. And they would say, but so they were able to lease a few spaces, but not nearly enough. And so after a few years, I said to Pat and Matt, you know, we got to get rid of this model. It's just not working. It just was impossible so to have a $400,000 or $450,000 24/7, 365 nursing station in a retirement residence where you have 135 rooms.
Oh yeah, sorry, the 140K is per shift, so times 3.
Yeah, you'd be right. You'd be absolutely right. So you know, so it's $450,000 a year, plus or minus. Well, that's impossible. You could only have that if you had a retirement residence with, you know, 200 rooms. So, and I talked to some of these daughters and granddaughters as well. And I said, well, you know, if you're in a retirement residence, my mother-in-law's in a retirement residence, and if something goes wrong, there is one nurse on call overnight. But if there's 2 calls, she can't be at 2 places at once. It's going to take a hell of a lot longer than 10 minutes or even 15 minutes for her to answer 2 calls. Trust me on that. I know, because there have been situations like that. So why is that any different? Oh, well, no. It's different. You know, and as you know, Gus, it doesn't matter how much logic you have. If the little old crocodile brain of human beings tell you it's not the right for my grandmother or grandfather, no amount of argument, you could argue for a year, you would not convince them.
Thinking fast, thinking slow, right? That's a good book on that.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted you and Lori to think about, if this is a model that you are actually serious about, which you may be, is what about using the Little Steps Academy model for Phoebe Services? I'm not saying you should, but you remember I sent you this, right?
No. Oh, no.
Okay.
Is that the daycare, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yes, you sent it. You sent that to me.
Yeah. So a young client of mine, Tim Reid, he's about your age, in Alberta, runs Little Steps Academy, and it's a brilliant absolutely brilliant model. And I have to say, Gus, that dealing with kids is much easier than dealing with elders. The marketing is easier. The marketplace acceptance is easier. It's just night and day. The problem with the Phoebe Services model, even if it's updated to 2020, is it still might fail. I don't know if this will work or not. We do know it works in Montreal. And the reason it works in Montreal is, and we're talking the Phoebe Services model in Montreal. So it's not multi-generational homes where Italians live together or Greeks live together. It's where an old Greek lady or an old Italian lady lives with a bunch of other old ladies. Okay? And that's what I meant when I talked about over 20,000 rooms in Montreal like that. It's a very accepted model in Montreal because Quebecers, as you know, they live in a more communal world anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Like people in Ontario like their privacy. You know, most people in Ontario don't know the names of their neighbors. Whereas in Quebec, I think I lived in Quebec for 5 years. I lived in Montreal, and they're much more, at least in my experience, much more social. So this is Tim's model in Alberta, okay? He's been buying homes, and he installs an early childhood educator in each home. So if you compare it to the Phoebe Services model, you would put in each of the Phoebe Services homes a PSW. She would actually live there.
Yeah.
And you know what a PSW is, right?
Personal service worker.
Personal support worker.
Support, ouais, support.
C'est quoi en français, personal support worker?
It's going to come back to me.
It's not important right now. So I want you to be thinking of Little Steps Academy as it applies to Phoebe Services Model 2020. So he buys these properties and he puts an early childhood education certified worker in the home, and she pays rent, just not very much rent. Many of his early childhood educators are coming from the Philippines. The Philippines is famous for exporting women cleaners, women nannies, women with ECE, early childhood education certificates. Filipina, my children, my 5 kids, you guys, had, had a Filipino nanny, and here they are all in their 20s and 30s, and she, Gertrude, still keeps in touch with them all. She remembers their birthdays, and she remembers them at Christmas time. And my kids are really close to Gertrude, and Gertrude's now well into her 80s and lives in Ottawa. So here's the model. They're allowed to have up to 6 kids. In Alberta, it's up to 6 kids. In Ontario, I think it's only 5 kids in the daycare. And right now they're charging $1,375 a month per child plus GST. There's no HST in Alberta, so it's plus 5%. So they're making about $8,000 a month per house. They're including food in this. And I've told Tim, your prices are way too low. I want him to up the prices over the next 18 months from $1,375 to $2,000. And I want him to charge food in addition to that, because these little munchkins, man, they can eat a lot of food, Gus. And I want him to charge a 15% admin fee, because somebody has to go buy the damn stuff and prepare it. You need to cover your costs. So I said, you got to change it. So anyway, he started with 8 homes. And he's in negotiation right now to buy another portfolio of 68 properties. So he's going to end up, I think, with 76 homes in Alberta, all of them Little Steps Academy, all of them making about $10,000 or $12,000 a month gross. That's about a $10 or $11 million a year business by the end of, we think, either the end of next year or early in 2022. That's where he's going to be. They do pay their early childhood educators a decent wage. They're not paying, minimum wage. So the model is pretty good. So just to give you the numbers, he'll be at around $12,000 or $13,000 a month per house. the Filipina ECE worker who lives in the house, she pays about $550 a month for her room, which is not very much. And currently they're making about $3,000 a month, but the plan is to raise that to $3,500 and eventually to $4,000 a month. Because when you're making $12,000 or more for each house, you can pay the mortgage and you could pay a living wage and still be left with, you know, probably left with $4,000 a month per house in your cash in your jeans, right? So if he can do 4,000 a month, maybe it's only 3,000, but even if it was 3,000 a month, paying all his bills, 3,000 a month, and he has 76 homes, it means he'll be, you know, Tim will have about $200,000 a month in his pocket, you know, every month.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. You know, that's not the, you know, I mean, like even you and I could squeeze by on 200,000 a month.
Yeah, pretty sure I could.
So imagine instead of having early childhood educators, if you and Lori had a PSW living there and use the same model. I think that would address the fundamental flaw in the Phoebe Services model, which was the daughter and the granddaughter's question, where is the 24/7, 365 nursing station? Well, we don't have that, but we have a PSW living there. So if there's anything that needs to be done at 2 o'clock in the morning, she's there, no problem at all. The other thing that is legal now, is legal in Ottawa now, is to add backyard coach houses. Remember we talked about that?
Yes, for sure. And I've done, finish your
point. No, you go ahead.
I've done some research, and actually it's the coach house probably that when we first got in touch, I watched a 40 minutes video on the property you were selling, and I didn't know who you were, but I really like your approach, and the coach house, I discovered that it's a big trend in Montreal also, but it's still under the radar. But there's an architectural firm called The Shed.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, and they're specialized in basically transforming, because in Montreal there's oftentimes a back alley,
yep,
right, to access. That's where people park their car, and they have, you know, some kind of a. Toronto is a bit built the same, I guess, in some ways. So they transform those shed into a coach home. So I really like adding value to an existing property. Fabulous. That way.
Fabulous.
Really like that.
And have you seen my Gigaplex video?
Don't think so. I've heard you mention that though.
Yeah, but I'm going to send you that just in a second. All right, we'll come back to that because it's a 13-minute video I want you to watch. Most of my videos take forever, but this one's only 13 minutes.
Perfect.
All right. So if we went back in time to 2015, what we would have done with that property that I showed you, Gus, is we would have built a coach house in the backyard. So we would have had 4 bedrooms in the main house. We would have had 2 bedrooms on the ground floor of the coach house and another 2 at the lower level. So we would have increased the number of bedrooms from 4 to 8. And one of those would have been reserved for a PSW. And again, she would pay very little rent, maybe $550 a month per rent, but she would get paid for the hours that she puts in running the house. It would not be as expensive as having an early childhood educator because, you know, she's not working there 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week. She's on call. So she has to document her hours. And if she works, 10 hours a week, it's $25 an hour, $30 an hour, it's $250 or $300 an hour. So I think that model would work with a coach house because you now have a bigger capacity, and having somebody live on site would make a difference. That's the key thing here. Something else, this is the White Rock project that I sent you. You remember this is what it looks like in BC. And what my client has done is his entire building above grade. So at grade, it's commercial, but above grade are made up of these. And you know how these things work, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So I actually sent that because my dad's an architect, right, or a designer
Yeah, yeah.
actually. So I sent him the floor plan, and you know what was genius about his first comment to him, because you know in my mind I had what you presented me, right? So in his mind when he first looked at it, he saw the lock-off suite as being the room of the elder, while let's say the person or so it works both ways, right? You can have a family in the green in the principal dwelling, or a family or one person, you know, like that's in his 40s 50s, and have the elder in the lock-off suite, or the opposite, which is like the PSW in the lock-off suite, and then the
It,
elder
it,
in the other one.
it sounds to me like Eve has all his marbles.
Yeah, and, and then the next thing I thought to me is like I was like, oh, all right. So what's cool about this too is you could make the lock-off suite a studio also, to make it mixed, you know, mixed use, right? You could make like a studio out of it for their personal, you know, for whatever type of work, an artist or whatever. And you could also have simply like, this is a trois et demi. I'm not sure how you say that in
C'est
English.
quoi?
Trois et demi, like 3.5. Like that's how we
Trois et demi. Oui,
categorize.
c'est ça. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you could have quatre et demi also in the same footprint, right? To
Absolutely.
really diversify
It's fantastic, the utility of it. And in fact, my client, Paul, in BC, is going to reinvent the retirement residence. He is, because, you know, this could get sold to a not-for-profit for affordable housing. But the other market that's very interested in buying this building from Paul, he's a developer, are the people who operate retirement residences, who are all over this model. I mean, the model I think really started with me a few years ago. I mean, you have to be careful to claim originality to anything, who knows? But it does appear to have started with me, and is now spreading across Canada and the United States because of the coaching that I do. Oh, shoot. So, you know, but to claim originality is, you have to be careful. There was another one I wanted to show you. Yeah, here it is. So the other thing that I wanted Lori to see, and of course you to see as well, is that this is really not new again. It's something that the Netherlands has been doing. So can you see this picture okay?
Yeah.
So the elder, if she has money, could be in the big apartment, and this nice young person here could be in the lock-off suite, because young people are having a really, really tough time finding affordable housing, not just in Ottawa or Montreal, although Montreal's better than Ottawa, but you know, Toronto and Vancouver and Boston and San Francisco and Austin and Los Angeles, and of course, you know, in The Hague, you know, in Amsterdam. I mean, you know, I taught in Stockholm, and to get an apartment in Stockholm is almost impossible, and the cost is ridiculous. So imagine, you know, if you know, especially in Vancouver, a lot of these elders have incredible amounts of money. They have homes that they're selling for $2, $3, or even $4 or $5 million. And they can certainly go into the bigger part, and then they can provide very affordable housing for somebody with a PSW, like this young woman who has a PSW certificate, live right next door and provide company, provide care. And, you know, maybe this young woman is going to university or to college, but she comes home at night, she checks in on her elder. In the morning before she leaves for school, she checks in with her elder. And if there's any emergency, of course, in the middle of the night. And so let's say that this elder would charge for the lock-off suite, would charge, say, $550 a month for just for the room, but she would have to pay this young woman, say, $30 an hour for any time. And if that woman, young woman, was maybe spending, between keeping the older woman company and helping her with various tasks, say she's spending, you know, 15 hours a week, about 70 hours a month, she's making $2,100 and paying $550. She's living in her own place for a negative amount of money, and she still has time, you know, to go to school. She's basically living now for a negative cost. So I think this model is exceptional, and it will also avoid the incredible catastrophe that's overtaken Quebec and Ontario and many other parts of the world, where all these poor old folks in a ghetto are dying like flies from COVID. So basically, I think if, you know, personally, if it was up to me and my wife, Dawn, I would never try the Phoebe Services model again, because I have, for myself, I have a rule in life. If you try something and it fails, don't try it again. That's it. You know, I draw a veil over all my failures and move on. But that doesn't mean that it can't work. I know it works in Montreal. I know it works in Holland. I know it works in Scandinavia. It certainly didn't work in Nepean, Ontario. Maybe it would work with this new model. But that's something you and Lori have to discuss in detail before you would try one. On the other hand, if you and Lori decided, well, maybe we won't do, let's see if I can find it here. We won't do, Phoebe Services or whatever you call it. We'll try Little Steps Academy. One of the things that I think you would do, if you were interested in doing that, is you would talk to my coaching client, Tim Reid in Alberta.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
for sure,
this model, and again, I can't claim any part of it. Unfortunately, I wish I could say it was mine, but it isn't. It's his. This model, I think, will make Tim a very, very well-to-do person, like a wealthy person.
Yes, and there's one comment I wrote that I really like about. The thing is, the children. Lori doesn't have any experience. Like she really has a lot of experience with older folks.
Yep.
With younger folks, not so much. But what I really like about the ECE model is as I wrote, is it's basically the go-to job for every military spouse. At some point in their career, they almost, like a crazy amount of percentage of military spouse, they end up opening, especially when they have young kids, right? They have 1 or 2 young kids.
I'm telling you, when I read that in your notes that you sent to me, and that's why, I mean, one thing we know is Little Steps Academy works. One thing we know is that Gus has some incredible in with the military.
Yeah.
And can you imagine how many properties, could be repurposed for this model? I mean, I love this model, and we know it works. So I like to do the things that are easy, not hard. But that's more true now. Like I founded an NHL hockey team. That's hard. Would I do that at 68? Not a chance. Not a chance. So I want to do, but even for my clients, I really want them to be successful, and pursuing a model that failed is kind of scary to me anyway.
No, for sure.
There was something else I wanted to show you. I don't know if I can, yeah, I have it here. You mentioned in your agenda that you thought that you could make money, maybe even a bit more money, in places that were less expensive than Ottawa. Ottawa's housing prices, here we are in September 2020, have gone insane.
Yeah, so, okay. So to go back to one of your point, it was on your clarity call, and it was on an email, and it's in almost, I'm book 2 or 3 now. It's in all your books to focus, to zone in on a business model. And as I wrote you, it's a bit of an issue for, I guess, as you told me, you have a different client, like, you just see opportunities everywhere.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
When you're creative, like you see, so Roger that, let's say whatever business model we decide to go forward with, this is, the rest of it, can be done, but it's considered a hobby, basically. That was your point, right? And I guess at some point, I'd like to pursue so waterfront lot are something that I'm interested in, because it's like the reason why gold has some value, because it's scarce, right? It's scarcity that provides value. And I think lakefront property on a nice lake an hour away from Ottawa will retain value over time. And actually, you know, like with the COVID and people like enjoying being a bit more in touch with nature and etc. I really like to secure some land. And what I liked about, I don't know if you can go to my presentation that I sent you.
Yeah, absolutely. I got it somewhere.
So one of the picture, it's in the last few slides. Yeah, not this one, right above. Yes, 10, slide 10. Slide 10. If you click at the link, I know, don't let, you see a bottom right picture?
Yeah.
So you have basically a $30,000 lot, which is number 3, another $30,000 lot, which is number 2, and a $35,000 lot, which is number 1. And the big one, 40 acre, is 80,000. So you could secure that piece of land, which you can develop on your own for not much money. And the reason I bring it up is because my friend, they know me, right? I have close friends that we've been to RMC together. For a project like that, I could find private investors to the amount of probably $1 million. Easy, because they're, you know what I mean? Like they know me, they understand like my skill set, and they will almost beg me to be part of whatever I would do there. I've already had an offer. I say, yeah, I don't really need your money at this point. But this one, you know, maybe it's an Airbnb with the same business model as the ECE that you just told me about, right? Imagine on that piece of property, if you could have a Filipino couple, you know, running the Airbnb thing. And probably with all that stuff, all that space, and the zoning is recreational also. It's residential and recreational. So I wouldn't and this lake is you can have motorboat. So it, as much as I don't like motorboat, they're going to become electric soon, and you know, like the rest of everything. And also I told you about, you know, the Cybertruck. So I have 5 on order. I don't know if you picked that up. It's hidden in somewhere in the text. You know what the Cybertruck is, right? It's a pickup made by, oh no, you don't know? All right.
Oh, are you talking about Elon Musk?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, I know the Cybertruck. Yes, okay. It looks like it looks like it's from a science fiction movie.
Yeah, so I have 5 on order.
Wow.
Okay. And these trucks will not be available to the rest of the planet. Only North America, because it's made like a F-150. It's too big for the rest of the planet, right?
Yeah.
So I could just imagine the publicity, because I'm gonna get one of the first few that comes out. You know what I mean?
Fantastic.
To be able to rent it, the possibility to rent it with the property, so you can do fishing, and there's Ski-Doo Trail over there. And a member of my family lives in this city. She's a notary, basically a lawyer. Yeah. So she could help me out to, you know, like find it. And I just gave you, I have a list of 15 property. As I mentioned in my presentation, the reason I said, all right, we need to take a break is actually the video Robert Kiyosaki, like that, like, you know, I analyze 100 to 1,000 property for everyone I buy, and then, you know, instantaneously I told myself, Gus, you might be going too fast.
So okay, Gus, let me chip in here, okay?
Yeah.
So a couple of things. This is an Airbnb listing by a client of mine, a beautiful young woman by the name of Sherry Ann McMahon. Do you know where Wakefield is?
Exactly, it's beside the lots that I just showed you.
Exactly. I mean, I know La Pêche very well.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me show you the pictures, okay?
Yeah.
So she bought, excuse me, Carrie Ann bought this one-bedroom cabin on a street in the middle of nowhere, near Wakefield, but not in Wakefield, near Wakefield. So it's about a 2-acre property. and she bought it for $330,000. It's a nice cabin, but it's just a one-bedroom cabin. And this was before I started coaching her. And she asked the realtor, this was her, she's a young woman, and this was her first real estate investment. She asked the realtor, how much can I rent this for? And he said, oh, I don't know, $900 a month, maybe $1,000. And she said, wow, I just paid $330,000 for this one-bedroom cabin. If I rent it for $900 or $1,000 a month, I'd be losing money. He said, c'est dommage. So she calls me up and says, Bruce, I hear you're a real estate investment coach. I said, well, yeah, that's what I do these days. And she said, well, could I get some coaching from you? And I said, sure. So I went out there. This was in the days before COVID, obviously. You could actually visit with your clients and spend time with them. Anyway, it's a beautiful property and a beautiful one-bedroom cabin. And this was in the early days, fairly early days of Airbnb. And I said to her, Carrie Ann, you know what Airbnb is? She said, yes. And I said, you know, I think this would be a really interesting Airbnb. You know, it's near Wakefield, it's near all the ski hills, but there's no waterfront here. There's no pond here, there's no nothing. And you know I like ponds. So yes. one of the recommendations I made to Carrie Ann is, as she's been quite successful with this, I said at some point, you know, you've got 2 acres there, dig a nature pond. There's some low-lying area here I think she could do that on. And she is thinking about that. She's not going to do it this year because of the COVID thing, but maybe next year. So she, you know, we can create our waterfront, even though the waterfront lots on La Pêche are more beautiful. But so let me show you what she did with it. You ready?
Yep.
And I really hope you'll show this video to your wife. We?
Yep.
Okay. So every guest who books there gets a bottle of wine. And this is how she's decorated it. Welcome to our cabin. She put, you can see even her cupboard doors are themed, you know, consistent with the barn. This is the living room. She's got an amazing assortment of board games. Obviously, big TV and a fireplace. That's the dining room and kitchen. There is a bit of a loft up there. That's just another picture. That's the kitchen again. Another close-up of the kitchen. That's the master bedroom, and even her curtains are barn doors.
Nice.
There's the bathroom. Look at this bathroom. I mean, she fit this up. Is that beautiful or what?
Yep.
Look at the shower. You know, so even if you were an elder person, it's not a roll-in shower, which is more expensive, but even if you had a walker, you could sort of, it's only, you know, this much. So most elders can navigate that if they had to. This is the loft upstairs. It does have a couple of bunks in it. A little, this is the loft. Sorry. Yeah. So I'll go back here. You notice you only see a little bit of the bunks. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why she doesn't have a picture of it in a minute.
I have a guess.
So here we have outside. She has, you know, I like the outside games, you know. So she has the hot tub. She has the barbecue, little sitting area, a little fire pit. I want her to put a bocce court in. I want her to put in outdoor ping pong. That's coming next year. So what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. This is not my idea. The idea to go Airbnb, that was certainly my idea. But Carrie Ann said, Bruce, I'm going to theme it. I said, oh, what kind of a theme? I'm going to theme it as a romantic getaway. I said, oh, that's really interesting. So even though she has the master bedroom and 2 bunks upstairs, so you could, if you had a couple of kids, you could bring the kids, but she downplays that and she themes it as a romantic getaway. From the moment this listing went live, Carrie Ann has been operating at 80 to 90%, sometimes 95% capacity. And this is what blows my mind. The worse that the weather gets in Ottawa, the busier she is. So let's say you and Lori, you haven't had a break, you're both working hard, you got a kid, you hardly ever get, you find someplace, the grandparents take the kid, well, without your mom, obviously, your granddad takes the kid or your brother takes your kid for the weekend. And this is the place you go for a romantic getaway with your wife or your partner. And she has been averaging between $4,000 and over $6,000 a month. You remember the realtor said she would get 900, maybe $1,000? And this is a phenomenon. And the worse the weather gets, in late winter, early spring, when the weather is really terrible, she's fully booked. It's the exact opposite of almost every other Airbnb I've ever seen. If you and I owned an Airbnb downtown Ottawa, in normal circumstances when we have lots of tourists, for 113 days of the summer, completely full. And then you could shoot a cannon through it in November, right? It's empty. So, most Airbnb revenues go up in the summer, and then they're a little bit, they're okay in the little bit of the spring, a little bit of the fall, and the winter. Other than Winterlude, your places are empty. That's not true for her. She's been consistently delivering $4,000 to over $6,000 a month to her top line.
And again, can you imagine you mix the lessons learned from what she did,
yeah,
right, to having, let's say, 4 lots, one beside each other, basically gives you a lot of freedom, right, of what you can do.
Yeah.
All of 4 are waterfront. And not only that, you take a bit of the ICE business model where you have, like, let's say a couple of Filipino, a man and a woman, there all the time, that basically lives rent-free. What the man can do a bit of maintenance, and you show him around, like, how to take care of the plants, because if I was to go there, like I told you, I have really good connection, like architects, des architectes paysagers, like landscaping architect. Like the focus would be outside, right? The house itself can be really cool. The thing is, I know quite a bit about design and architecture, so I can add value to property just by the way it would be made. You know what I mean? Like efficient building, efficient structure, and yeah, I mean. And you can add service if you have a couple there that lives there.
Yeah,
let's say.
It's fantastic.
Then you can add meals. You know what I mean? Like you can serve meal.
I'm telling you, it's a great model. Couple things you have to know though is, and you already know this, Quebec has more rules than a porcupine has quills.
Yeah.
Quebec is more like France. In France, everything is regulated. Yep. If you decide to go get a haircut, you better have a permit to go get your haircut.
Yep.
I mean, it's incredible. So 2 years after Carrie Ann started Cabin Faubert, she got a notice from the municipality or the township or the county, whatever, and from Quebec, from Quebec City, that she had to be licensed to run Airbnb.
Yeah.
And it was scary. Because they come and they inspect everything, every detail of your business is, I mean, they do a physical inspection and they put you through like a test almost.
Like an audit.
Thank you, it's an audit. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, they want, the Airbnbs to be professionally managed. Quebec has a reputation for hospitality. You know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has some of the best food in North America. It has some of the best ski hills in North America. It has some of the best hospitality in North America. Some of the best events in North America. But Quebec, as a nation, has wanted to maintain a certain standard. So you've got some Airbnb hosts. I take my kids every year to the Buffalo Bills home opener. I won't go this year, obviously, because I don't think there'll be any fans. But we drive. I have 5 kids. So I take them down. I'm the designated driver. You know, I got 5 kids, and they're allowed to bring their girlfriends, their boyfriends, husbands, and wives. So usually it's at least 10 or 11 people and me. My wife doesn't come, by the way. It's a drunk weekend for the kids, and the only thing I have to do is I drive and I pay the bills. That's my job. So when I was in Buffalo, on the way back, we stayed at an Airbnb in Toronto. It was run by some idiot. He had his keys chained. It was illegal, right? I mean, it was hidden from the condo corporation. The keys were chained to a red bike somewhere within a couple of blocks of this place. So we spent at least half an hour, if not 45 minutes, hunting in the area for a red bike. Finally, my youngest son, Matthew, he saw it and he opened up the lockbox. We got the keys. The apartment that I stayed in, that was owned by this guy, I go in there, I go into the bedroom, there's vomit on the carpet. Somebody who had been there previously had barfed on, you know, had gotten drunk and barfed. It hadn't been cleaned up. The bed had been made, but it didn't have any pillowcases, and there were no towels in the bathroom. The place smelled. You can imagine how it smelled, and you know. So I did a little bit of a cleanup, and I didn't make any fuss. We stayed there. My kids don't care, you know. It was supposed to have, you know, enough beds for everybody in these places. There weren't enough beds. They talked about everything was a lie, and it was a mess. So Quebec has gone in a different direction. So your model, if you do something with these 3 lots or 4 lots, your model, you have to be careful. You have to be aware that you will need to get all kinds of approvals. Yep. All right. It's in Ontario, we can kind of, you know, skate a little bit, not in Quebec. Okay.
Yeah.
So
no, I knew about that.
I'm sure you did.
I have a friend that, I have a friend that actually went through this process, and yes, it's a bit of a pain, but you know what the nice thing about it is, when you open, let's say you go to the place, there's a big, il y a une pancarte, there's a sign like this that shows the number of stars.
Exactly.
You know, like his cottage is a 3-star thing, because it relates mostly to services, right? The more services you provide, the more star you get. Yeah, I'm sure she probably has a picture of that.
Look at this. Can you read this here, Gus?
Superhost, yeah.
She got 4.96 out of 5 from 195 reviews, and she's considered a superhost.
Yeah.
And she got the stamp of her approval from the government of Quebec. And I'm telling you, can you imagine making, when she had her first month over $6,000, I just didn't believe it. I said, come on, Carrie Ann, you're exaggerating. But, you know, she would never say anything that was untrue. I mean, she would never, but I said, I can't believe it. And she's been consistently in the 5,000s. And then she's been now in her peak months is over 6. You know, that makes a big difference to a young person's life, to have that kind of money. And what we're doing now, Carrie Ann is doing now, is we're looking to buy a couple more like this. Because if she could add in the same area, though, right? So what I don't want Carrie Ann to do is, I don't want her to have one in Wakefield and one in Carleton Place.
Yeah, for sure.
Or one in Wakefield, one in Carleton Place, and one in Rockland. You know, you drive yourself crazy. So it's a tight geography. So if you're going to make a commitment to La Pêche, that's a big commitment, and you want to dominate that area. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. So are you okay to continue?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's like
okay.
I said, maybe this is not where and if we can go back to the goal, right? It looked a bit lofty, got it. my perspective on this, it's better to aim high and fall a bit short, because you're at least making decision that will not paint you're not going to paint yourself in the corner by thinking too small, right?
Correct. Okay.
And the 20%, like I wrote it down, right?
Oh, sure.
It's to me like it's kind of a benchmark for innovative growth company, and I also mentioned, yeah. So
can I
maybe the hobby that we've just discussed with the Airbnb is not going to be the growth driver for the entire thing, but to be able to secure some kind of a lakefront property, there's a team to it, and Don Robin, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I understand. As I told you by email, you know, one of the things I've learned as a coach is to support you. It's not what I think is best. It's what you think is best, tempered by something because I have to add a couple more, you know, things.
Go.
All right. So
sure.
So just because I want to make sure that you have a full perspective, because, you know, I've done this stuff before. So number one, you've got to have the ability to cope with the rules and regulations in Quebec. I have no doubt about that. Number two, one of the things that's going to kill your internal rate of return, your 20%.
Yeah.
Right? The one thing that's going to kill that is the length of time it takes to build something. So I'm sure you know that. All right, I'll just do a little diagram for you. So I'll show you what Carrie Ann's situation looks like. All right, just give me a second here. So this is, I don't know if you can see it okay. So this is money going out of your jeans. This is money coming into your jeans. And on this axis is time. So Carrie Ann bought Cabin Faubert. So she spent some money doing that. And then Carrie Ann did a little bit of renovations, you know, furniture, et cetera, et cetera. She put it on Airbnb. She had success, and it's just been going up. Even during COVID, she had a couple of down months for sure. But then once COVID restrictions were eased a little bit in Quebec, she went back to even higher numbers. So, you know, this is a very typical, you know, cash flow profile. You're spending money here, you're making money here. Now, I'm going to draw what it's going to look like for you if you buy these 3 lots. And the same thing would have been true in Dunrobin. All right, so hang on a second. I'm going to draw it again. Okay, so your cash flow profile is going to look like this. So you buy the 3 or 4 lots here, and then you spend money on studies, design, building permit, development charges, construction. More time goes by, and then finally you open and you get some money. What kills your internal rate of return is this huge amount of time that is required from here to here to get any kind of land. It doesn't matter how smart you are, and you're obviously a very smart, talented person. That is a killer. So if you're looking to get a 20% internal rate of return, the speed to your first dollar of revenue is really, really, really important. So one of the models that if you bought these 3 or 4 lots, one of the models that I think I would do, and I would recommend that you and Lori look at, is while you're doing all this incredible work to you know, blah, 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 what I would do is I would do some glamping yurts on this property. You know, I told you, I think I bought 2 glamping yurts for one of my properties last year.
Yep.
Yeah, they cost me
Is it with Chris? Is it with Chris? Is it the one with Chris? Or Nick, sorry, I said Chris.
Yeah, Nick Cripps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick and Simon and I own a property on Constant Lake, 4,000 frontage feet of waterfront, 177 acres of property. It's beautiful. We've got not 1, not 2, but 3 houses on it, 3 cottages on it, 8 RV sites on it, you know, where you can park your RV and you can hook up to the, you know, we've got outdoor washrooms on it, and we've got 2 yurts on it. Okay. And we bought that property, including the 3 houses, the 3 cottages, the 8 RV sites, you know, the docks and all the equipment, the workshop, and the 4,000 frontage feet, 177 acres, including 50 acres of tillable land. We bought it for $700,000.
Not bad.
Not bad. And so if you buy these lots, what I think you would do is, you know, you would put some yurts on it, because we bought those yurts for $21,000. We built the, you've seen those yurts, eh? I've showed them to you before. So we bought them from Anissa Zato, who's a former architecture student of mine who builds them in Pickering. They're good down to -40. Remember I told you that? And they're insulated and, you know, keep out the heat and keep out the cold. And you build a beautiful deck. They sit on the deck. The deck was about a $14,000 cost and about another $5,000 to fit them up. So about $40,000 to do a yurt. And imagine if you had, like, I don't know how many lots you're talking, I think 4, right?
Yeah, and one is 40 acres.
40
right?
acres. I mean, how many friggin' yurts could you put on there? I don't know. The only thing you would have to do is you'd have to obviously drill a well. Maybe there's already a well on the property. Do you know?
I don't think so.
You should write that down and find out, because having good quality water is really important. So hopefully there's a drilled well on at least one of these lots, because they're expensive to drill, and you know, and you would want to know what the quality of the water is before you buy this property. That's one of the conditions you would need on this particular property. So anyway, you need a well and a septic, and you would need a, you know, a bathhouse, basically, you know, so people could, summer and winter, so it has to be insulated. But once you have, you know, the showers and the bathrooms, the septic field, the well, and you have 3 yurts or you have 10 yurts, I don't know, you will be very quick to revenue.
Yes.
Vous comprenez?
Yep. Yeah, no, totally.
And the yurts are one of the most profitable things you can do. So this model, we would have now some additional costs, but it would give you some revenues much sooner. So the green here, right? So it takes a little time. It takes you a summer to build your septic field and your bathhouse and your bathrooms and everything else. And then, boom, you've got some revenue. That makes a very significant difference to your internal rate of return. And what will get you to 150 million? What will get you to 150 million, Gus, is an internal rate of return, which I expect will be between 22 and 24% per annum. Okay. Do you know how to calculate an internal rate of return?
I've looked at it. I understand it, but before I do it, I'm not gonna master it, right? So I haven't done it.
So I have, I'll send you this. I have about a 30 or 40-minute training, video training on how to calculate IRR. I'll send you that, okay?
Yes.
And I'm a really good teacher. So when you do the video training, you will understand. You will understand. But even if you never figure it out, but I'd like you to, you know, if you're going to be a professional real estate investor, it's not cap rates that the pros look at only. They look at cap rates. Cap rates are very important, but they look at internal rates of return. It's internal rate of return that makes you a wealthy person.
Because it takes into account the leverage, basically, right?
You know, let's take, for example, a cap rate. Gus and Bruce buy a $400,000 duplex. in Montreal.
Yep.
And we pay cash for it. You know, you find $200,000 of cash in your couch, and I find $200,000 in cash in my couch, and we put in the 400 grand. And we rent the downstairs unit for $1,200 and the upstairs for $1,800. So we're making $3,000 a month in gross income. So we have spent $400,000 on this place. We're making $36,000 a year. About 34% of every dollar that we earn goes out the window for property taxes, insurance, vacancies, repairs, maintenance, property management, administration. So we bought the place for $400,000. We have gross operating income of $36,000. $12,000 of it goes out the window for everything else. And Gus and Bruce are left with $24,000 of income. We don't have a mortgage, so we don't have to worry about the mortgage because we're rich dudes. We paid cash for it.
Yeah.
The cap rate is very easy. It's $24,000 of our net operating income divided by 400,000 is 6%. Right? And 6% is my minimum target in urban areas for cap rate. So we're doing okay. Not exceptional, but 6% is okay. However, what that 6% doesn't show is that in Montreal, that house is going up, say, 4% a year. So really, Gus and Bruce are not making $24,000. They're making another 4% on the $400,000 that they spent on this place, which is another $16,000 a year. Right? So really, we're not making $24,000. We're making $40,000 a year on that property. What the internal rate of return does, it brings together the cash on cash return, the real estate inflation, and if you have a mortgage, the mortgage pay down, right? Because you and I, if we have tenants, we're not paying that mortgage, they are. All right. So there are three main types of return in real estate. The cap rate, excuse me, only catches one of them. So as a professional investor, let's say you and I worked on Wall Street. Trust me on this. If you and I walked into the boss's office and we showed him the cap rate without the internal rate of return, we would be looking for a new job, right? Because it's the internal rate of return that drives the stock price, that drives the creation of wealth. Because you got to remember, let's say we had a mortgage of, say, $320,000 on that duplex. So you and I only had to put in $80,000 of equity. That 4% increase in the value of the property, that 4% increase is $16,000. But our return, yours and mine, is not $16,000 on 400. It's $16,000 on our equity.
Yep.
So 16,000 divided by 8,000 is like a huge amount. It's like 20% returns. So we have a 6% cash on cash return, and then we have a 20% return on equity because of house inflation. And the problem is that you can't, these are not strictly additive. Like an internal rate of return is like a weighted average. So I'm going to send you that video train. It's not hard to do. And I'd really like you to learn how to do it, because if you're going to run a $150 million a year business, that's what's going to get you there. And this is the model that you have to, every project you do, you have to say, how do I get to revenues as quick as possible?
That's why it's easier to grow with existing property and animate it, because the time, the expression we say in the Army is the flash to bang. So when
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, yeah, the flash to bang. Yeah. So when we throw, how do you call that? It's their flash bang, basically. Right? It's to blind the opponent when we do out.
I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent years in the cadet corps. You know.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I could shoot.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, I could shoot.
My oldest is starting that. I told him the best gig, get your pilot's license for free. So he's doing the Air Force thing.
Well, you know, I was in the Corps in the 1960s, and I learned how to shoot, obviously. And I wasn't an engineer then; I was just a student. But I knew I was going to become an engineer, so they put me in the demolition, so we got to blow up stuff.
Yeah, that's my trade, Royal Canadian, yeah, flash to bang ratio, exactly.
No, I'm going to keep this. You're not getting a copy of it.
Yeah, cool. And by the way, I have to just for the record, you know, when I was doing my jogging in the morning, I actually picked the trust thing from you. I think because I consume a lot of your stuff, right, in the past month. So I picked that up in some of your video where you said the most important thing is trust, right? So and the quote I sent you was trying to take your idea, which was different from mine. So it means we're either both wrong or both right. So I said, if we're both right, how would it work? You know what I mean? So in my mind, it was trust is like the seed, is a predecessor to relationship, you know, the good kind, let's say. So it's like a conditional, it's like a condition. It's a predecessor, right? So that's why, you know, it's a seed. So you could argue that's the most important because that's what happens first, right?
I agree. I mean, and you know, I tell my kids that the real value of a marriage is having one person in your life that you know always has your back, that you can always trust her or him to have your back, will never betray you. That the value in a life of that, you know, I mean, all men, and I'm sure many women, maybe most women, you know, they you know, they think about, you know, other partners. I mean, you know, I've been married a long time, you know, but I would never, ever do anything. I love my wife. I would never, ever do anything to hurt her. And, you know, she trusts me completely and I trust her completely. And to have one person in your life that, you know, so I said to my kids, when you are getting married, they're starting to get married now. And they all have really, really strong partnerships. 2 of my 5 kids are married, 3 are not, but the other 3, I think, are on their way. And they understand the value of having you and Lori stay together, you know, is huge to you and to her, but also to your children and your grandchildren. Mm-hmm. You will set the tone for your family for 3 generations. And when the fastest way to get poor, have you heard this joke?
Yeah,
Get divorced is one of them. Buy a horse ranch and buy an NHL team.
Yeah, I would change the you know, the saying in racing is, how do you end up with a small fortune running a racing team? You start with a large one.
Exactly. Same thing with the NHL. All right. So I think you have a lot to work through. And I'm not kidding. This is a really great term. We have now created something called, I'll send it to you, obviously, called the flashbang ratio. That we're going to use that. And I'll tell you something, I'm going to use that. And what it really means is that you take the fastest route to revenue that you possibly can. All right. So a couple of other things that I thought we should look at. Let's see, what was I going to show you? Yeah, I just had a question for you on your existing portfolio. So I went just before we got on the call today, I went to Google Maps and I looked at your building here again.
Yeah. And
I've asked you this before, but do you want to tell me again, are there any possible animations you could add to this place?
Yeah, that's where we live right now. And one thing that, and the neighborhood is so great that I've made the choice. I've read the book, you know, treat your house as a you know, as a income property, right?
Yeah.
So when I leave this, when we move out, I'm going to keep this. And I was actually looking at this morning at not this morning, yesterday, at how a basement apartment would work, because there's definitely room for that.
This is a beautiful house. Now, do you know, like in Gatineau, Quebec, they have, again, very stringent rules about basement apartments. Many of them are not permitted. Montreal's, I think, a little bit easier to deal with, but I wasn't sure if that would be permitted use here.
Yes, there's one in the neighborhood. He's a realtor, and actually he has income property and he lives in one. So the thing that's important to mention though, because my wife has no interest whatsoever, even, you know, having someone that lives with her, like, you know, in the basement, or so I'm gonna have to wait until we move out.
Oh, I understand that. You know, keeping the wife happy is very important. I understand that. But the basement apartment would have its own entrance, correct?
Yes, maybe worst case it's through the garage.
Yeah, I can see that. We have, by the way, we have put entrances in garages. I'll show you one that I did. You'll get a kick out of this. So this is one of the buildings I own. And what I wanted to show you was, oops, see if I can get a little closer. Yeah. So this house here has it's a 3-bedroom home here.
Yeah.
And on the side here, it has a little 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we bought this a few years ago, we were told, oh, don't worry about it. That 1-bedroom side yard apartment, that's legal. I said, really? The realtor, she lied to me. She looked me in the eye, Gus, and I hate that when people lie. I try never to say anything that's untrue, but she looked me right in the eye. Anyway, after we bought it, we went back to the city of Ottawa, and we got the original house plans. We went back through the record all the way to 1956. And they had the house plans from 1956 on microfiche. You know what microfiche is, eh?
Yeah.
It's like microfilm. I mean, no, the young people, other than you, most young people would have no idea what I'm talking about.
It's because, you know, when you listen to movie, you watch the library and, you know.
C'est ça.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we got the plans, you know, you could go, and for $100, you could get them blown up. And so we got the plans, and we looked at the entire record with the city of Ottawa from 1956 to about 2015 when we bought this place. No building permit for that side yard apartment. So I don't get mad. I didn't sue her or anything like that. I just said to my wife, we're going to fix it. So we had to put some more fire separation. We had to put in inline smoke detectors because it's one furnace serving both. And we had to do about $10,000 worth of work to legalize the apartment. Okay. Then after we had legalized the apartment, so the entrance to the apartment is here. Okay. And this picture must have been taken while we were working on it because you can see the windows boarded up, but normally that's a window. So you notice how it appears that there's 2 driveways here?
Yeah.
So the first tenant we had for this little side yard apartment was a young woman. Unfortunately, she had, like your mom, she had MS. Very nice woman. And she had a big, because she could only drive she had one of those big Toyota Tundra, you know, it wasn't a truck, it was like, I don't know what they call it, but it was a big Toyota thing. And she had a dog by the name of, I forgot the dog's name, but, Sam, I think his name was. Anyway, Joe. Joe was her dog, a female dog who was like a service dog who helped her. But she couldn't park on the street. So I put these, can you see the pavers here?
Yeah. So
I put these pavers in, and about 2 or 3 weeks after I put the pavers in, because she could park her truck here, the bylaw officer comes along, knocks on my door over at my house, and says, "Are you the owner of 1268 Henry Farm Drive?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, I want to talk to you. You put in the second driveway. That's illegal." And I said to him, "Whoa, are you sure?" He said, "Well, I'm the bylaw officer." "Yes, I'm sure." I said, "Well, I think you're wrong." And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I actually was ready for this. I had an old newspaper, the Ottawa Sun. And on the front page of the Ottawa Sun, there was the mayor of the city of Ottawa, Jim Watson, saying how proud he was that they've changed the bylaws to allow people to have what's called hardscaping in their front yard to get cars off the street. Because in Ottawa, we have so much snow, you have to get the cars off the street. And he has now legalized that. And I said, I think you're wrong. The mayor's on the front page of the damn newspaper saying you're wrong. "Oh," he says, "Mr. Firestone, that applies in Canada. that applies in Barrhaven, in Riverside South, and in Orleans, but not in Nepean. This house is in Nepean. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, you're going to have to remove that. So I said, holy smokes, I just spent $5,500 putting those pavers in for my neighbor, my tenant here, who has MS, and she needs that space. You know, I have 16 inches of compressed fill under there. I've got, you know, pavers that'll last, you know, those Roman roads that they built 2,000 years ago. I said, that'll be there for 2,000 years, unless somebody digs it up. That thing will last a lot longer than you or me. He said, well, I'm going to have to fine you. I said, well, hold on. I guess you're here because one of my neighbors complained. He said, well, yeah. And you're not going to tell me who it was. He said, no. So I said, I'll tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. If you fine me, I'm not paying that fine. He said, well, I'm going to issue a $500 fine. I said, well, you can issue it, but I'm not paying it. He said, well, if you don't pay it, we will tax sale your home. I said, no, I don't think you'll be doing that. I said, what I'll do is I will go to the Committee of Adjustment and argue for a minor variance. If I don't get a minor variance at the Committee of Adjustment, I will go to the Ontario Municipal Board. It's now called LPAT, the tribunal system. And if I don't win there, I'll go to divisional court. And could you, before you fine me, could you please tell the neighbor, I'm not asking you who it is, could you please go and tell them that when I go to the Committee of Adjustment, or I go to the LPAT, or I go to the divisional court, she can be anonymous, she can make or he or she can make an anonymous complaint with the City of Ottawa, but you cannot be anonymous in a judicial process. You know that, eh?
Yeah.
So he or she, whoever it is, they will have to show up and tell me why I should not have the same rights as the people in Canada and Orleans and Barrhaven and Riverside South, and why somebody who has multiple sclerosis should not be able to park next to her apartment. And in addition to that, what you're really telling me, sir, is that in the 11 years or 12 years since amalgamation of, you know, Ottawa used to be a bunch of little towns and cities. They amalgamated 11 cities and towns and townships and a regional government into one. So the 12 governments went into one. And I was there. I was getting, now by this time, Gus, I was getting mad. And I said to him, I was there when the Premier of the province of Ontario in 2000 announced the amalgamation. And he promised us that we would have bylaws that would be harmonized across the whole region. And what you're really telling me is that you didn't do your job, because you're telling me we have not harmonized the bylaws that allow this to happen everywhere except here. That's your fault, not mine. So you go back and you talk to the folks, and you talk to whoever complained, and then you come back to me, and then you find me, and we'll start the process. All right? And he by that time he thought I was a crazy man, you know. But I was very firm with him, but polite. I wasn't swearing or anything. I wouldn't do that, but I was very firm. That was 5 or 6 years ago. I've never heard from him since. So this is still here, okay? And so, you know, when it comes to this kind of stuff with the bylaws, Gus, I will defend myself. I will. I won't take any BS. But what I wanted to show you was this thing here. You see this garage door?
Yeah.
It has a man door in it.
Yeah. This
is an insulated, garage door, special order from Lachine, Quebec. They make everything in Quebec, right? And I'm not kidding. So this was about $4,000 door. That's expensive. But do you want to see what we did inside?
Yeah, sure.
All right. It's been a tremendous success. See if I can find it. And this is relevant to what we are talking about. So what we did was, this is my wife, Dawn. So what we did, Gus, was So here's the garage door. Now we're on the inside, okay?
Yeah.
So it's an insulated garage door. And you can see that the tracks are still here, right?
Yeah.
And so in the summer, you can open it up and it's as if you have, like, it's in Hawaii. Sometimes if you go to Hawaii, sometimes you don't know when you're inside a building, when you're outside, because, you know, the weather's so nice year round. So what we did was we put an epoxy resin floor down. Can you see the epoxy resin floor?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what that is, right?
Yeah.
It'll last 20 years. So we put it on, this is a basement, so we put it on an epoxy resin floor, and it's pebbly so that if it gets a little wet, you don't slip. We put in a 14,000 BTU natural gas fireplace here. And my wife converted the garage into an Airbnb. Can you see there's a whole kitchen here?
Yeah.
So here's her, it's not big, but you know, my wife is a wonderful cook, you know, I should show you. So it's a galley kitchen. We don't put in dining rooms anymore. Nobody has the time to sit down for dinner anymore. So we just put in like a lunch counter.
Yeah.
And then when you go around, there's actually 2 rooms. So when you go around to the other side, you can see that there's a bedroom here. The bedroom has the tech package. There's a full stacked washer and dryer here. There's a bathroom here. You can see it there. So we turned, that garage door allowed us to add a 3rd unit to our building. And we put it on Airbnb. And then when COVID-19 hit, we took it down from Airbnb and we rented it long-term. All right. So when we had it on Airbnb, we were making about $85 a night on average, and we were doing about 25 nights a month. So 85.
Wow, that much?
Yeah, we were doing between 20 and 25. So we were making about $2,000 a month with Airbnb.
So your point is you could actually, because I have it, as you've seen, the garage is approximately 24 by 22.
You could have a whole microsuite in there.
Yeah, and you do that plus a basement.
Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, okay? So anyway, I just want to make sure you understand. So we were making about $2,000 a month on average with Airbnb, and then we rented it out to a very nice young man. His name is Mike Adams, and he unfortunately he's going through a divorce and needed a place, so he rented it for a year, I think, at $1,400 a month. It's furnished, $1,400 a month. So we don't make as much money, but Gus, there's a lot less work.
Yes.
Airbnb is a lot of work. So when you and Lori are looking at what you're going to do with your yurts, if you build some yurts on those beautiful properties that you're looking at in Lepech, I have another model that I wanted to mention to you, okay?
Yeah, for sure. I'm all ears.
Some of those yurts should be rented on a yearly basis. Now, people think that's crazy, but guess what? I said to Nick and Simon when COVID hit us in February, do not rent the yurts out or the RVs or the cottages on Airbnb this year. Forget it. Just forget it. So what we did was we pivoted to renting them to families for the whole season. So you don't share with another family, it's yours. So you don't get as much money, but you remember what this means, eh? Committed monthly recurring revenue, CMRR.
That's what everyone's after.
That's the holy grail of business. So if my wife runs off with a younger man, the day after she runs off, I would take every one of our Airbnb units off Airbnb. There's no way I would do that. You with me on that? I hope she doesn't run off. But if she ran off with somebody else, there's no way somebody like me would ever do Airbnb. It's way too much work.
Yeah. So
Carrie Ann McMahon loves what she does, and she's fantastic at it. My wife is fantastic at it. You know, these women are mothers, grandmothers. Carrie Ann is not, she's young, but my wife is, both a mother and a grandmother. And she loves taking care of other people. She's been taking care of me for 35 years. So she loves Airbnb, but she probably gets 10 or 12 texts a day. How do I connect to Netflix? For somebody like you or me, I don't know about you, but that would drive me crazy.
Yes, and that's why, to be honest, like I have another job, right?
Yeah.
So that's why having someone on site, whether it's long-term care, whether it's IC, whatever, I need an operator.
No, I'm with you on that. But if you had a bunch of yurts on this property to get some income sooner, there's nothing that says you couldn't rent that yurt out for the year. $1,200. Well, this is what we did on Constant Lake. $1,200 a month for a year. It's yours, because you got to remember these yurts are good down to -40. So if you want to go there at Christmas time, with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, your life partner, you want to go there with your kids and have a really great experience, and you're not freezing, right? Because you're inside these nice warm places, but you can go snowshoeing and you can get on your snowmobile and have fun. So instead of making about $21,000 for each yurt on Airbnb, you can make about $14,000 a year renting it out for the year. So it's just like us. Instead of making $2,000 on Airbnb, we make $1,400. But there's a lot less work, and it's committed monthly recurring revenues. Like Mike pays his rent every month, and the yurt's in a Constant Lake. Now there's another twist to that. Let's say you had, I don't know, let's say you had 15 yurts on your property, 15 glamping sites, whatever. I would rent one of them out to somebody who wanted to do RMT work there.
RMT?
Registered massage therapy.
Oh, yeah.
So we even have a commercial use for it. So let's say you and Lori had 15 yurts on this property at La Pêche. One of them could be rented, again, on a yearly basis to somebody who does registered massage therapy. We rented one on another property one of my clients owns in the East End near Limoges. He rented it to a guy who does energy healing. You know what that is?
Yeah.
And then there's
rough idea.
Yeah, and then there's another one who was rented to somebody who teaches sweat lodge training. It's like an indigenous thing. You go into a sweat lodge and sweat out all the poisons of modern living. So there is another model out there that somebody who could be doing registered massage therapy could have her business in one of these, and you rent it out again, $1,200 a month. And because it's commercial use, you would charge them a percentage rent as well.
Yeah, you mentioned 4%.
Could be 4%. It could be as high as 8%. Some of the franchises, charge as much as 10 or 12%. But the low end would be 4%. The high end was probably 6 or 8%. But or you could rent one of them out to a yoga teacher. Can you imagine if I was a yoga instructor? And I do yoga, by the way. I'm not an instructor, but I do yoga. But if I was a yoga instructor, imagine if I said to the people I teach yoga, hey, by the way, this weekend, come out and rent some yurts, and I'll do yoga class inside a yurt that I rent from Gus and Lori, right? And if you do the numbers, it costs about $100 to go and get your registered massage therapy, for I guess about an hour. Maybe it's $120 now, and you don't have to do many RMT sessions to pay your rent, right? And if you actually look at it, if he or she did, 3 a day, 5 days a week, that's 15 a week times 4.33 weeks. It's 70 appointments. Yeah. That's $7,000 in revenue.
And if they're smart, they're going to be, putting more massage therapists together because they probably have a network of massage therapists, right?
I mean, Gus, you're so smart. Exactly. And if she's renting the yurt, she can only do 3 massages a day. There's a limit to, maybe she can do 4, but there's a physical limit to what you can do. And the rest of the time that yurt is empty. So if there's other massage therapists, hey, come on in, I'll take a percentage of your percentage, right? So there's a lot more involved in not just how do you get to revenues quickly, but how do you also reduce the amount of work that you need to do?
That's going to be key for me, Bruce. As you know, like I'm fully committed. I'm going to do the work that I need to do to get to my goals. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna do my day job poorly because of my projects.
No, I'm with you on that. I take my job very seriously, as do you, Major. And you know, if I thought I was doing a bad job as a coach, I wouldn't be coaching anymore. And you're an officer and you have responsibilities. But
yeah,
the fact is, you also have a responsibility to your family. Okay, you do have a
yes,
responsibility to Canada and to the armed forces. And I'll tell you a story. My dad worked for the government of Canada in post-war reconstruction. So in 1945, 46, as Canadian armed servicemen came back from overseas, my dad worked in what was called post-war reconstruction. So getting Canada's economy off of war footing and onto a civilian footing. And a few things that my dad did. My dad, working for Minister C.D. Howe, the Minister of Everything, started Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation. It's now called Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. My dad started that.
oh
And,
wow,
yeah, well, with other people, but he was the head of the group that brought CMHC to Canada, which was pretty important for Canada and Canadians. And their job and their mission, which they took very seriously, was to make sure we had enough housing for the returning servicemen. And so you see all these little tiny houses in Ottawa and Quebec and
yeah.
Alberta. That was all built with CMHC funding. And it was one of the things my dad was very proud of. But then one of my dad's colleagues passed away at a very early age. You know, he was in his late 40s. And the minister and my father and many other civil servants, this would have been in the 1950s, early 50s, stood at the graveside, and C.D. Howe and my dad saw on the other side of the grave, the man had left behind a young wife in her early 40s or late 30s and 4 kids. And they had no fucking money whatsoever. They were, I mean, back then, the idea of a pension, you know, the pensions would have been so tiny as you just, you know, you get $55 a month. So the minister turns to my father and says, Jack, how many kids have you got? My dad said, oh, I've got 4. He said, well, you see what's happening over there? Don't let that be you. That came from the minister. And my dad took that to heart. He said, holy smokes, the minister is right. So my dad took his job very seriously, and he wanted to, you know, to contribute to the national rebuilding. And I think he did. But he also wanted to take care of his family too.
Yeah.
So I think you have 2 missions. But having said that, you want to adopt a model that pretty much runs itself.
For sure. For sure. And a question, how, if I went ahead and do the hobby thing with you know, the yurt, how much of an hindrance is it going to be for the longer term business model? You know what I mean?
So I don't think so. I think it's consistent with that. We you know, and by the way, what I would really like you to do is to talk to your wife and think about the different models, but don't jump into anything. You were right to put a brake on things, in my opinion. You know, we hadn't even done a coaching session. You're going to buy a $300,000 lot, maybe 2 of them. So the fact is, the glamping business is an operating company. It's a real business. You have to be involved. It's a day-to-day grinded out thing. The other model, which we've been talking about, is where you have some yurts and you have some buildings, you know, with the lock-off suites and all the other cool stuff. But all of that, in my opinion, should be committed monthly recurring revenues. So I would not go the direction that Carrie Ann went with Kevin Faubert, or my wife went with some of her properties, our properties, you know, unless Lori wants to do it.
No, but yeah, to be honest, I think I could pull off. I wouldn't mind getting a lower return. You know, instead of having $4 grand in my pocket, right? Because I'm gonna have 3 lots, right?
Exactly.
So if each of them is $2 grand instead of 4, I'm perfectly fine with this.
And it's not that much lower. It's $21,000 for the year versus $14,000. It's $2,000 for the microsuite versus $1,400. So it's about a third less. But the amount of work is drops by 95%.
Yeah, and in the end, like you said, it's speed is really important.
The only time I hear from Mike Adams, you know, who rented that place, is he sends me funny jokes. You know, he and I trade jokes back and forth. You know, the last one he said is, "What do you call a man with a shovel, Bruce?" I said, "Mike, I don't know. Doug." Yeah. So in terms of the amount of work that we do, we get his rent every month, and he sends me the occasional corny joke. You know, what did one flea say to the other flea? Shall we walk or take the dog? So we have about 352 apartments that we manage, and I have good relations. We have good relationships with all of our tenants, but the amount of work that we have to do in the committed monthly recurring revenue model is this much compared to, say, running a glamping business. So what I did was I took the glamping model and I changed it to a committed monthly recurring revenue model. Once you have a group, say you had the 15 yurts, once you have a registered massage therapist and 14 families that are going there on a regular basis, the amount of work that you need to do to rent those places every year is probably pretty much zero, other than what I do, which is send back and forth corny jokes, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So your time, and Lori's time too, is worth something, in part because your parents too.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, what do you value your time at? You know, I value my time at about $350 an hour. But even if you value your time at $85 an hour, the fact that your workload has gone from this down to this is really important.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, maybe probably for another call, but I went to visit my triplex this weekend. Yeah. One thing I've realized through the lecture is I've not been a good landlord. I was fortunate enough to buy a property that was newer, right? It was built in 2005.
Yep.
But you know, I did so there's no deferred maintenance or really minimal, so that's not bad. But I've not treated this like a business, you know, providing the best value and animate it. And
so can you and I, can you add to the agenda for our next call that you and I should visit the triplex, you know, using Zoom, using Google Maps, and we should also revisit your property in Montreal, and I'm also going to send you one other thing. Maybe you've already sent it, but I did another video training with Tristan Pelletier on proper residential leasing. I don't think I've sent that to you either.
No.
I really want you to look at that. That's a longer training, so you'll have to make time for that. But that training, proper residential leasing, will tell you an awful lot about how to be a better landlord. Also, how to make more money.
Yeah.
But how to make more money and have happier tenants. So I'm going to send you that. Now, there's two more things I want to just touch on very briefly because I got to go. It's this. Your model for those 3 lots in on La Pêche, or 4 lots, is right. This is a property called Blue Heron Storage. And I used to own it. And it has, can you sort of see the storage buildings back here?
Yeah.
So it has storage buildings in back, but it has, excuse me, it has a duplex in front. And the upstairs is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. And the downstairs is a 2-bedroom apartment with its own entrance. And the garage is both a garage and an office. So the office for Blue Heron Storage was in the garage. We had a tenant downstairs who rented the 2-bedroom apartment down here. And the upstairs was rented to a retired couple by the name of Bert Loranger and his wife, Lynn Loranger, another French family. But don't hold that against them. Wonderful people. So Bert and Lynn lived up here. They paid me $1,200 a month to rent that apartment. And I paid them $1,200 a month to supervise and manage Blue Heron Storage. So basically they were a retired couple. They had their own pension. They could live for free. And running a mini storage business is not very difficult. You know, somebody comes up with a pickup truck and a trailer. Lynn would look at her sheet and say, yeah, B12 is free. They'd go there, open the garage door, throw their crap in there, close it up, put their own lock on it, give Lynn and Bert a credit card. The only thing that I didn't let them do was I didn't let them run credit cards. That's a bit risky. My youngest son, Matthew, used to run the credit cards. That was back in the day when you actually had to, you know, do it by phone and punch in all the damn numbers. It took a long time. But Lynn and Bert were working between the two of them about 20 hours a month. They loved every aspect of the business. They took care of it as if it was their own. And my cost to run that business was 0. And I think you're thinking exactly the same way.
Exactly.
So I am 100% on side with that. You find a nice retired couple, you know, they basically live for free at La Pêche, which is a beautiful area. And the amount of work they'll do, especially if you go, not to the Airbnb model, if you go to the committed monthly recurring revenue model. So for me, even if I had the house, I would have the house here, I'd have another apartment here, I might have a microsuite there, but I would rent those things out on an annual basis, you know, so they would be there and they would manage it, and you'd have the yurts on the same thing. And then what I would do is I would have a few of my properties on Airbnb. So you've got the base cash flow, committed monthly recurring revenues, very little work, and then you have a few places, so you bring in new blood, and those are the places where you get your, you know, your peak profit.
Your high margin, yeah.
Your high margins, say so. All right. So that's that. And then
that's like 10-20% of the business max. You know,
20% I think is a good ratio. Could be 10%, could be 20%. That is perfect. It's so typical of you. And the other thing that I want you to put on the agenda for next time is I want to show you a model, the microsuite model, which is a very, very good model with cap rates of 20%, not internal rate of return. If you and I get an internal rate of return on a project that is, you know, 22, 24, 26%, 28 maybe, fantastic. But I'm going to show you this. If you put it, can you write it down and just put it in the agenda?
So what? How should I
just say?
Call this?
What would you do with $100,000 today in a time of COVID-19, Prof Bruce? What would you do with $100,000 today in a time of COVID-19, Prof Bruce? Because if you could get cap rates, which we're doing, of 20, I think this one is like 23%. I don't even calculate then you don't have to calculate the internal rate of return. It's going to be something crazy. It's going to be ridiculous. All right. So Gus, I have really enjoyed our first session. Lots more work to come. Don't forget, in the next 2 weeks, you owe me a mid-month report, right?
Yep.
So
Thankfully, it's I've done already.
I'm sure it's half done, but I really want you to talk, if Lori has the time to at least watch part of this, I think that would help, so that you two can think things through together, and then let me know how you're doing.
Okay, one thing to put on next week's agenda, if you want, is I'd like to discuss with you actually the structure, like putting stuff under my name versus
I had that all prepared today, but your agenda was this long. We got through this much.
No,
absolutely.
Okay.
I have it ready to go, but I'm out of time. I have to do some coaching at 1:30.
Okay, if I can give back to you a bit,
Sure.
It's gonna take a minute. The best useful book I've read is by a guy that's been an FBI negotiator, and it's called Never Split the Difference. I'll send you the details. It's dangerous. The stuff in there is dangerous. It's like halfway through the book, I was at the dealership doing some work on my wife's car. And I said to myself, like, Gus, come on, let's do this. Put that into practice. I didn't want to because I didn't feel like I felt dirty doing it. I left the office smiling with $200 worth of gift certificate. It's crazy. Crazy.
I can't wait to read
stuff.
it. I like to read it. And I'll tell you something else. I've been reading this book here.
Happy City, yeah.
And I can tell you there aren't many books, but I wish I could rip this cover off, Gus, and put my own cover on it and pretend I wrote it. It's so good. It's so good. I mean, it's just, this guy describes my vision and many other people's vision today of what a city might actually look like if it was designed properly. We build absolutely terrible cities. And one of the things that I do with my clients is we're committed not only to having great projects that make a great return for you and for me, but also produce better neighborhoods. And this guy, I mean, I wish I could say, you know, instead of saying, what's his name? Instead of saying Charles Montgomery, I wish I could say Bruce Firestone here. I got to go.
Thank you so much, Prof Bruce.
I really enjoyed it.